I thought, fucking hell, he doesn't even know I'm here. I haven't spoke to him in a year. He don't know what I'm doing. He definitely doesn't know I'm on a cable crawling between two fucking skyscrapers. And that was it. It just triggered something inside me. And I thought, fucking hell, Chris, what are you doing? This cable could snap at any minute. And when you spiral down and, 70 meters to your death, they're not going to tell your little brother that you was showing the world what you're capable of because you're fucking fearless, dude. They're going to say that you ended up as a druggie in Hong Kong and you threw yourself off a skyscraper. And yeah, okay, I might have been a druggie in Hong Kong, but I still had self-respect. I was as good as anyone else. I wasn't going to fucking kill myself.
This is Frankie's podcast. Fancy keeping it on the air? Buy him a virtual pint at buymeacoffee.com/Frankie'sPod. It helps with hosting and keeps him from moaning about money. Go on, buy him a pint. He won't stop telling everyone he's skint otherwise. Cheers.
Hi, welcome back to the podcast. Today I've got the great honour of speaking to Chris Thrall. Chris is a former Royal Marine, YouTuber, adventurer, and author. And he's got a few good best-selling books out there that I recommend anyone looks up on Amazon or go to Chris's website, and there's links on there for them as well. Some quite good stories there, I believe. I'm gonna have to get them myself. I'm not an avid reader. Are they an audiobook?
Mate, I wish they were, Frankie. I've got to get cracking on that. I've been slack on it, man, since I got into YouTube. That algorithm just takes over your life, as you're probably finding out. It's you got to play the game in it, and it sucks the life out of you. So audiobooks, yeah, I'm gonna knuckle down and get them done. Last year was dedicated to the Atlantic, wasn't it? So, yeah.
Well, like I said, I spoke before we started. There's 5 questions that I ask on this podcast, which is, where did you grow up? Why did you join? What was it like? Why did you leave? And what have you done since? So if we can just go back to the beginning, and you can just give us a bit of a background on where you grew up and why you joined the military.
Right, I grew up in a place called Bromley. In fact, I was born in Bromley, southeast London, part of Kent, but left there when I was very young to come to the southwest, where I've lived all around the southwest, and I've been more up your way. I've lived in Lincolnshire. I should say up your way. I mean, anywhere past Exeter's up north to me. In fact, anywhere past Torquay is up north, really.
That's near France, I think.
And I always say that gives you a bit of a clue as to my childhood. It was, if I say it's chaotic, that's a pleasant euphemism. It was pretty full on, really. Funny, actually, just saying that, I remember being dropped off at a pavement in Sleaford in Lincolnshire. My dad having just driven us kids. Don't think my brother was born yet, but me and my sister drove us 300 miles in his little minivan, his works van, because he was a carpet salesman. And then he just burst into tears, give me a hug, jumped in the little minivan, and off he was up the road, and he was just crying and waving in the mirror. And I just stood there thinking, that's the last time I'm ever going to see my dad again.
Fucking hell.
And then my mum come out the house and went, "Oh, where's your father? Isn't he going to stop for a cup of tea?" And I'm like, I was about 7. I'm thinking, you're leaving him, Mum. I don't think he wants to stop for a cup of tea. And so culminated with me at 17, Frankie, being kicked out of home for the second time. First time I was kicked out of my school uniform. That's when I lived with my mother. Went to move my dad. Thought it was idyllic. We really got on well. We used to play squash once a week and have a beer afterwards, even though I was still at school. But it was really special, that bond with your dad. And I'd never had that before. To be honest, my dad had been a stranger, really. Even though, he'd been in our lives. It was, very different. My son, hope you get to meet him one day. He's a little legend. He's just absolutely gorgeous and he's so funny. Every adult loves him, right? I hug and kiss him like 150,000 times a day, mate. You know what I mean? And I'll tell him, when you're 18, don't you go getting shy on me. I'm going to kiss you in front of all your mates. And your daddy is always going to love you, And so moved in with my dad. I come home from school one day. And there's all these fucking like ornaments in our house. And made of like raffia and stuff.
Right.
So I'll give you a clue. That wasn't my dad. And it definitely wasn't me. And I'm like, Dad, whose is all this stuff? Oh, this is your new stepmother's. I met her up the pub last night. She's moving in. We're getting married. And
Jesus.
I'm exaggerating a wee bit, Frankie, but I'm not exaggerating a lot, believe me, and that's the next thing. Next thing, all my stuff's getting thrown out, thrown in the garden. I'm homeless again. And I wasn't a nasty kid, mate. I wasn't hard work. I was just very, very damaged, like a lot of service person, my motivations for joining were the same as probably a lot of us. I was told I was a failure by school. My parents said I was a failure. I'd never amount to anything. And when I moved into my car, I had a Renault 12 Estate, a big ugly brown thing. And I'm living there. I'm sleeping in the back of it, in between a couple of like Akai speakers or something from my stereo, my hi-fi as we used to call them.
Yeah.
And my mate knocks on the window. My mate's dad was the CSM's, the Sergeant Major of Lima Company in the Falklands. A big name in the Marines, or he certainly was back then. He came out with the classic line in the documentary when the Canberra came back from down south, and the interviewer said, "So I'm here with Cameron, who's the Sergeant Major of Lima Company in those battles that we saw on the news. So, Cameron, what can you say?" And he just looked at the camera. He said, "I've truly seen my platoon grow up. They've had the baptism of fire. I took down boys. I've brought back men." It's like, fucking what? It's like General Patton or someone. Do you know what I mean? It's like Churchill sort of like speech, and that was my mate's dad. What the public didn't know is my mate used to watch the news at 10 years old to see the names coming up at the end of the news. I always get upset when I say this, to see if his dad had died that day, and then he'd go and take himself off and run the baths, and so no one bothered him, so he could cry in peace, because we didn't cry back then, did we? That was a big men didn't cry.
Well,
and so
we're only just starting to now, really, aren't we?
Well, exactly, yes, and sometimes we're crying too late, aren't we? Because these things haven't been talked about. So anyway, there's my buddy knocking at the door, and he's like, "I've just joined the Royal Marines. I've been on the potential recruits course." It's called the Potential Royal Marines course now, by the way, in case anyone's going to call me a water mitty, which you're more than welcome to, because a lot of the Marines was shit. Some great moments interspersed with a lot of boredom, a lot of waiting around, and a few idiots. But what am I saying? So he says, yeah, I've been on the PRCs 3 days at Lympston Commando, Chris. They put us through all the commando tests. You know, you do, believe it or not, you run the endurance course and you do the assault course, even as a civvy. You just do it in light order, you know, and obviously you don't do the 30 miler and the 9 mile speed march, but you do those other 2 tests. And also you have to fall backwards off the diving board in the swimming pool, which is a bit of a bottle test. So he'd done all that. And of course you do written exams and verbal interview and this kind of stuff you have to pass. It's just to show that you're a bit intelligent. Don't think you have to be that intelligent, but a bit intelligent. You got to know like what a grenade is and what, you know, what you do with it, just so they know you're not going to eat it or something. Anyway, so he come out with a classic line. It was so hard, Chris. You could never do it. So he's just told the world's like most damaged kid that I can't do something. And no one fucking told me what I couldn't do, because I'm just going to do it to fucking piss you off. So I said, oh, yes, I can. That was it. I went down to the recruiting office and no, I'll tell you what I did. It was New Year's Eve and we're at his place. And it might even have been Christmas Eve on it, but got shit-faced as you do. And round about midnight, I left the party and I took myself off onto Dartmoor, where there was this massive rock feature. Anyone who knows Dartmoor knows what I'm talking about. Just a mile from the village, and it's half a mile from the village. And I said, you know what? I'm going to run around that rock and back 1 mile. And if I stop, I'm not going to go and waste the Royal Marines time. But if I can run all the way non-stop, I'll go down the recruiting office after the Christmas holidays. So I wrote about this in my book, State of Mind. If anyone wants to learn more, I wrote this book when I ran the length of the United Kingdom, carrying all my camping gear in a Bergen and sleeping by the side of the road. He says, blowing his own trumpet. I ran an ultramarathon a day for 36 days to raise awareness of veteran suicide. And what can I say? Yeah, one thing I learned a really valuable lesson that day that I think certainly our young friends out there could learn by. And that was, I was absolutely ball bagged. I was running around this rock. I was a smoker. You know, I was actually fitter when I was younger because we were all into the BMX. So I was really, really fit. But then I'd sort of lapsed for a few years and I was dying. I was absolutely dying. And every voice in my head was like, Chris, why are you even thinking you can do this? Why are you going to go and waste the Royal Marines' time? They don't want people like you. And I thought, if I stop running, Frankie, I'll be quitting for the rest of my life. And I'll be a loser for the rest of my life. So that was my most important commando test, was before I'd even joined, because I didn't stop. And when I got back, I felt that sense of achievement that you do when you've seen something through against the adversity. And I went down the recruiting office and he said, right, hop up on that bar, do some pull-ups. I thought, okay. So I hopped up on the bar, done 19 pull-ups. He says, all right, get down. I was like, oh, fuck. Failed, haven't I? I bet everyone else does like 25 or 30. And turns out I did the same on the actual PRC. And in my interview with this naval officer, it was a female, she said, you're the one. And I thought, you always got to make you must have had this yourself. They always make you feel you're the one that's letting everyone down. You're going to fail, right? And I thought, oh, God, here we go. She's going to say, you're the one. You know, I've got to ask you to go home. You're not quite good enough, Chris. She said, you're the one. You're the one that did 19 pull-ups. I was like, so I gathered by this time that 19 pull-ups was a good thing. And then I learned that most blokes or some blokes struggle to do 3. So that was that. And very important lesson, certainly a character of the Marines, is I was on the endurance course, like I say, where they give you this ragtag kit that's, probably from post-Second World or pre-Second World War or something, and these boots that don't really fit you. And I'm legging it up the endurance course, and it is a ball bag, that endurance course, especially when you're soaking wet and you're weighing a ton. And you got hills like that on Woodbury Common, which is sort of, I think it's near Exmoor, although don't quote me on that. And I'm starting to fall back, but I won't give up, because I know if I give up, I've got to go and face, what a mother that kicked me out the house because she got remarried, and a dad that kicked me out because he got remarried. And and both of them said, "Why are you wasting the Royal Marines' time? They won't want you." This is the support we had back then. Things have changed now, and I couldn't go back, Frankie. I could not go back. I wouldn't give him a sack. So I hung in there, but I'm starting to fall back. And one of the PTIs, he just dropped back. I thought, oh, here we go. Here we go. Sorry, fella, you're not what we want. Fucking, you can walk or something. And he said, all right, fella. He said, in the Royal Marines, we're not looking for supermen. We're looking for blokes just like you who won't give up. God, I'll tell you what, picked up the step then, didn't I? Do you know what I mean? And that's the kind of leadership that you need, isn't it? Not just in the military, but in the grand scheme of things. So that was that. So I picked 4-2 Commando in just outside Plymouth, a place called Bickley Barracks. And I picked 4-2 because I knew there was an island tour coming up, Belfast. And I thought, if I'm going to serve in the Marines, I want to see active service, because I picture this scenario where, imagine if you served and you never went off to a war or a conflict. I'm 18, I'm 19 years old, for Christ's sake, naive as hell. That's how I used to think. Now I'm sort of, glad I got away with what I did, sort of thing. But 4-2 were going on a Northern Ireland tour. So next thing you know, I'm 19 years old, patrolling the streets of Belfast with a fully automatic weapon. It was quite kinetic, that tour, which was unusual, because you get a lot of people go, yeah, I only did a tour of Ireland. I'm like, what do you mean you only? Our tour, we probably saw more action than a lot of people that served in the Middle East, or in the Gulf, especially if they worked in stores or something like that. Just to give you an idea, we were patrolling along the back of the Ardoyne, and a gunman, I should say sniper, but you can't really be a sniper with a Kalashnikov, so I'll say gunman. He opened up out the back of the Ardoyne, and you could just hear and it's surreal. It's like, oh my God, all that training we did, this is that moment. Yeah. This is that moment. And I'm looking at the grass, and it's by my feet going, these little greeny brown geezers kicking off. And by that time I was well running, and all you could hear is just our firing mechanisms just cocking to the rear and rebounding up, the echo reverberating off all the walls. And our brick commander's like, take cover, taking cover. And we legged it behind this building. And when I look back to try and locate the firing point, our buddy Jock, who I call in my book, but is actually Geordie, very dear chap called Dean. he was spark out like in the middle of this this sort of, it's like a park that we'd been patrolling across. And I was the first aider, so I started to run back for him. And as I'm sort of running, the team are going, or the brick are shouting, "Chris, get down, fucking get down, mate!" And I'm like, "Out, hang on, did I join a different Marines to you? Because I'm not gonna leave him." And in that moment, as I started to go back for Dean, he popped his head up, and you just see his eyes were like saucers, man, and he looked like that quickly. His equipment was all spread around. So his electronic equipment was like, 3 meters this way. His SA-80 was like 2 meters that way. And he got up, grabbed his electronic equipment, grabbed his rifle, and just come running over. And he's like, I'm hit. So I ripped open his parasmock, ripped open his I think we called them Aniba jackets, the vest. Aniba jacket. And I'm like, "You're not fucking it, mate. You're not it." He said, "I'm hit. By which time the brick commander was on the radio going, "Hello, Zero. This is November 50 Bravo. Contact, casualty, wait out." And then he's listening to George, and he's like, 0 November 50 Bravo, no casualty, wait out. George is like, "I am fucking hit. I am hit." He's like, 50 Bravo, casualty, wait out. The OC got on the radio and went, "Corporal so-and-so, have you got a fucking casualty or not?" and he went, "Yes, sir." And it tells you a bit about the military, doesn't it? You could see he was afraid to get, like, I'd have just gone, "I don't fucking know, just wait out. I told you to wait out, fucking wait out." But anyway, George had the tenacity to patrol back in with us. They tried to get him to go in the ambulance. We put a cordon up where he thought the firing point. He went, "It's up there. It come from," and I'm like, "No. It come from back there, it come from the Ardoin." But how could I doubt him when he was the one that got hit, right? He was the tail end Charlie. And of course, he was the last person we should really listen to because he was in shock. Yeah. And it was where I thought it was. Not that, you're never going to get a round off against the IRA unless unless something's gone really wrong for them. By the time we were looking for that firing point, he would have been in the back of a car, whisked away in a bath, all the explosive washed off, all his clothes burnt, the weapon wiped down and put in a hide. By which time the police would rock up at the house, the occupants of the house who would have been taken kidnapped. They didn't volunteer their front door to the IRA because otherwise they get kneecapped if they didn't, and they probably wouldn't, supported the cause anyway. So it wasn't until the next day we worked out what happened. The first round had gone through his weapon sling. The second round, he had a hole right through his weapon sling. The second round took I say electronic equipment because
I know what you
that's
mean.
What we used to call. We weren't allowed to say what it was, but I think people who know, if you know, you know. The second one took the antenna off his electronics, and the third one hit him in the chest, but it didn't even hit the plate, the fiberglass plate. It hit above it, so he took the full force of the round on the fiberglass wadding in the jacket. It spun him around, and that's why his equipment had flown off. And the round actually ended up in the top pocket of his parasmock.
Fucking hell, he's been lovely.
Kind of mad. So that was one incident over there. The first time we went out the barracks over there, as we ran out the front gate, the IRA bombed the Sanger, which was one road down from the back gate. The mate I said that I joined up with was on top of the New Lodge flats in the OP they had up there, and the IRA came out with a M60 or something, and they just opened up at them, not knowing that the SAS were in there at the time. And my mate says all the Marines like hit the deck, and he was scrambling across the floor to get to the radio. He said the SAS just calmly kicked the window open, and they were just spraying their armor lights down into the street. So always makes me chuckle. That's so yeah, quite funny actually. We went out and we had two SAS guys in our patrol one day, and they put on green lids so that they blended in with us. And we went past this garden shed, and then when I saw them, and then when we gone like 10 meters past the garden shed, I looked, and they were gone.
Yeah, I had a similar incident. It was the first tour I'd done. It was an amaze tour, and we were dropping. We'd gone up to the mountains to the west of Belfast with a couple of guys in the back. No, to the mountains, the Black Mountains.
Oh, okay.
So we were driving through the rural areas to go to an Irish football club. There was like two guys in the back of the vehicle with us, and we dropped them off, and off we went. And then a couple of days later, we were picking them up again, and we drove up, set a VCP up to, like a pretend VCP team type of thing. And we were just stood there, and I was leaning on the back of the Rover, literally been stood there for like 15 minutes. And I looked at the Brit Commander, and I was like, where the fuck are they? They're supposed to be picking them up, but they just went. I just heard this voice in. We're in the back of the vehicle. And we were like, and I'm like, how the fuck did you get in there? And we just walked past you. I was like, I've been stood here. And they just appeared. Didn't know who they were, what detachment they were with. Detachments. I think that's where they came from. But we dropped them off. They disappeared. And all of a sudden, they just appeared back in the Rover again. Well, they were fucking good at what they were doing. Couldn't talk about anything like that, or tell us what they were doing or anything like that, because we were all quizzing them in the back of the Rover on the way back. What did you see? What did you do? Who are you? So it was like a young soldier. Someone like that was a fucking god. You know what I mean? I bumped into one once. We were on patrol around Lisbon, and we'd done a VCP, and a guy was walking up the road. And I stopped him and asked him for his ID, and he was like a bit of a tramp, a bit smelly, a bit fucking unkempt, and I was giving him a bit of shit and stuff like that. And the Brit Commander said, fucking leave him alone. Yeah, all right, fucking off he goes. A couple of days later, we were in Lisbon HQ, had a briefing for the patrol, walked outside to load up in the loading bay, and this guy walks up next to us, pulled out a fucking bag with lots of weapons in it, loaded them all up, and I'm looking at him and thinking, fucking hell, that was the guy I'd stopped the other day. You know what I mean? I was like, fucking hell, bit of a twat. So what was after Ireland for you then?
So after Ireland, Norway, Arctic warfare training. It's a phenomenal experience. I won't say you're probably the best age for it at 19 or 20. What I probably was by then. Really cold, incredibly heavy weights that you're carrying, to the point where you think, is this even like possible? But looking back, funny enough, I just took a team of novices to the Arctic this time last year, and it's so different as an adult, and you're stronger and you got more mental fortitude, and you can enjoy it and appreciate your surroundings and stuff. When I was, I remember the first time I put a Bergen on skis, I honestly, hand on heart, I thought it was a piss take. I thought the lads were getting me on a bite, and they was going to say, "Oi, Chris, fucking take it off, you twat. We don't actually carry them." Right? That's honestly because they're not even downhill skis. They're
Yeah,
cross country. So you're only clipped in by your toes. You got no stability whatsoever, and you're supposed to ski downhill, carrying, this 80-pound plus Bergen. And I've seen the plus because I saw guys back then. We had something called tent sheets. In fact, for anyone who might have been there then, you might remember that was the winter they swapped from tent sheets, which we used in our training, to lightweight tents, which was a great move, obviously. But I saw my mate Marty put the whole. You're supposed to carry this little. It was a weird shape. It was like a pentagram shape. The idea being everyone carried one. And so don't matter how many of you there were, if you put them together, you'd have enough shelter for the number of people there, right? So it basically looked like a yurt, a green yurt. And and they were great until the guy rope snapped that was holding the roof up to the tree in the middle of the night, and it came down like that, that much above your face. But anyway, yeah, I saw Marty, honestly, the weight of this frozen tent sheet in the morning. And we'll say tent sheets, probably, eight frozen tent sheets weighed as much as a Bergen. And this guy had to volunteered to carry it all. I was like, better you than me, mate. Anyway, so yeah, great. Did all the ice breaking drills and stuff. I thought it was really hard then going in cold water. Now I do it every morning, like for fun. Back then, though, I thought it was like the worst punishment anyone ever can do next to being shot. And then I was part of a kind of like a specialist security detachment on board HMS Invincible, the aircraft carrier. And that was like one of the most incredible years of my life. To be paid to float around the ocean and go to places like Barbados, and you're 20, 21 years old, and ours was the first ship to have women on board. So it was like we kept getting in News of the World for all the affairs, and the captain shagging this one, and the padres shagging them all, and all this sort of stuff. It was like two of the Wrens went AWOL. I think when we were in Cyprus or somewhere, or Portugal, and they were sending the captain postcards from everywhere that they went. But yeah, that was a special year, and it was also nice because your personal weapons are a 9mm and a SLR, so I got to see what all this about 7.62 versus 5.56 was all about.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly, I mean, the SLR is a thing of majesty, and it's a rifle. The SA-80, they call it a pup gun or something, don't they?
Yeah, bullpup.
Bullpup. I'm not knocking it. I'm making any, they both have their places, but that SLR, if you was in the Falklands, you want the SLR. You want something that if it hit a rock, it would obliterate it and take out the person hiding behind the rock, So that was quite interesting. I was telling some of the other...
Here's a question for you. I once got told by a lad in the Navy that, because we used to live in Gosport, so surrounded by the Navy, because our regiment was down at Thorney Island at the time. And they told me that the Marines on the aircraft carriers, their accommodation, or their billets, or whatever you want to call them, were in the ramp on the ship.
That's someone who knows their stuff.
So is that true?
It's not actually in the ramp, but literally the first level of deck under it. The ramp is raised, so no, It's not. I don't know what they keep in that ramp. Probably like a ropes locker or something. We were at the very end of a deck, so we were below decks, obviously, but we were on like the top level below decks. We actually had a staircase right outside our door. In fact, it was it was almost like in our, I don't know what you call that section of the ship. There's probably there's a name for it, but we could come out of our door and there was like a staircase going up, and that brought you out right next to the ramp on the forecastle.
Yeah.
So that was great for us because we could just nip right up there, sun uppers or sundowners or smoke a ciggy or whatever. But that was invincible for a year. That was, that was pretty cool. And then I left. I moved back to Plymouth because we all got kicked off Invincible. A certain weapon system, can I say, got removed from it or allegedly removed from it, and so we were redundant because that was our job, was protecting those things.
Yeah.
So I just opted for a unit in Plymouth, not knowing. I put in for HQ. I didn't know what the draft entailed, and it turned out to be pretty much guard duty, which I then did for the next 3, if not 4 years, and which I didn't mind doing because not only did I buy a house in the city, but I also started a business, and I worked this marketing business. I was an independent distributor for Quorum International, for anyone that remembers the personal attack alarms that came out right back in the day in the early 90s. And I did really well at it, Frankie. I sold a lot of these products, car alarms and stuff, introduced a lot of people into my network, which I called my company the Max Tech Group. And next thing I knew, I got put in touch with a guy in Hong Kong who had hundreds of thousands of distributors in a company called Amway, which is a slightly dubious company, but I won't, or dubious if you want to make your fortune, I should say. But, it's been going a number of years. So the chap's name was Vince. I call him Vance in my memoir, and he was in I think I missed a bit out. I invited a chap called Flash Gordon, who was in the Marines Police in the barracks, and I said, Flash, are you do you want to come to a business presentation? I'm involved in this business. I think you like it. He said, Chris, I won't waste your time, mate. It's not for me, but I've just met a guy on a police course. He's in a Hong Kong army, and he's well up for this sort of thing, mate. Give him a bell. So it was funny back then. Things were just different. You get given a phone number and you just call a complete stranger and things would be good. That's what we did. We just had I actually had a mobile phone back then, but nobody knew what it was. It was a Motorola, and it was about like this long. But sorry, I'm digressing.
That's right.
The reason I mention it is, like, these days, fucking hell, everyone sends like 10 texts just to like ask you what you have for fucking dinner or something. Do you know what I mean? So I'm there. I just called this guy up in Hong Kong and said, Vince, it's Chris. I'm in the Marines in Plymouth. I work with Flash. He tells me you're into marketing. He said, yeah. I said, I've just got involved in a company. Can I send you some information? He said, yeah. Send your distributor number. I will start right away. Fuck me. I was like, don't you even want to know what it's about? Right? By the end of the month, he signed up hundreds, close on 1,000 distributors. And our turnover for the month was close on $100,000 US. And my bonus check from that was, I've got it here. I've still got a photocopy of it somewhere around. It was like 2,568 quid. So I'm earning $1,000 a month in the Marines, and I've just earned 2,600 quid from my business. Well, I knew I had to get out as soon as I could. That was like my golden ticket. I was picturing the Porsche, the big house. I was getting lauded around the company as, oh, this is Chris. Chris has got the biggest business in the Asia Pacific for Quorum. I'm like, oh, how do you do? It was, fucking spend most of my time in a suit and had a really nice BMW and everything. It was all fucking on, borrowed the money for it and everything. But it was, that was total ego, materialistic 90s, thought that I'd made it sort of thing. And cut a long story short, by the time I served my 18 months notice and got out of Hong Kong, the business had fizzled away to nothing. It was no real fault of my own other than maybe, I wouldn't even say short-sightedness. I just started to see they could not bring new products out fast enough. It was too complicated a process. They didn't have something called consumables, which is why Amway does so well. Amway does well because it sells, for example, soap. So even if you don't sell any, Frankie, you use it yourself, don't you? And if you've got 1,000 people in a network all using that soap every month, and you're on 5% of that, ching, you're already on an earner. If they're using the washing up liquid, the toothpaste, the dirt, which they're all encouraged to do, well, we didn't have that. We had one-off products like a car alarm. You only buy it once, if indeed you buy it at all, So, cut long story short, I went through this bizarre series of jobs. I sold computer memory chips, but I never actually had to sell anything because I was only employed for my white Western, face.
So had you moved out to Hong Kong then?
Yeah, sorry, I should have said I took an indulgence flight. My third time in Hong Kong. You get an indulgence through the RAF was like 40 quid.
Yeah.
So I used to drink 50 quid's worth of alcohol on the flight to get me money back, And there I am in Hong Kong. It's quite funny, really. I went in the headquarters of Quorum International that day. The chairman, a chap called Wilson Wong, said, Chris, I said, Wilson, look, a year ago, I was on under $1,000 turnover a month. Now it's, this month we've turned over 2,600. What's going on, mate? He's like, Chris, the problem is, it's your distributor. They don't work hard enough. Sorry, I do the accent. I'm not trying to sound like some outdated British racist. It's just like, this is how I lived. I live with Chinese out there. I become a part of me, mate. As anyone who read my memoir, Eat and Smoke, will know. And so when he said it was my fault, I spun around and I walked out the door. And as I shut the door behind me, I thought, forget it, Chris. Don't look back. Don't even think about this business ever again. The future is, and went through a bizarre series of jobs selling these computer chips in a company where I didn't actually have to sell any, but that was my job role. The old eccentric Chinese boss just wanted Westerners in the office. So when his customers flew in from abroad, like Thailand and South Korea and Japan, to do these $1 million memory chip deals, his thinking was if they walk in my office and see that I employ Western staff, they'll think I'm big and successful. In the Chinese, it's always like big golden fortune company.
Yeah,
super lucky fortune company. It's this kind of antiquated sort of cultural way of thinking. Anyway, cut a long story short, within 7 months, I was chronically addicted to crystal methamphetamine. I was living in a rat-infested outhouse tagged onto the back of Vince's place that he very kindly let me stay in for free. And I was phasing in and out of clinical psychosis. And if that wasn't bad enough, I was homeless and working for the 14K, who were a Hong Kong triad family.
How did you slip into that? Into crystal meth and stuff. I mean,
can I just say before I tell you that, when I say I was working for the 14K, I was a doorman in one of their nightclubs.
Right.
I was never a triad, never I was a Westerner. That you can't be a triad, right?
No.
But I was a doorman. They wanted Western doormans. So when the Guilos came in, the foreigners, you could kind of be the go-between between them and the Chinese, so things didn't get nasty. So I got into it. I've been to quite a few dance parties in the UK and raves, a few organised raves and a few wild parties on Dartmoor and that sort of thing. And really kind of was a big part of my journey, I suppose you could say. I was learning a lot about life that I didn't know. I was quite naive, really, despite the fact I'd been through the Marines, and learned a lot about myself, and always had a pretty much great time. And then never thought nothing of it, really. But when I was in this crazy computer company in Hong Kong, I got introduced to crystal meth one day. I worked with a schizophrenic guy called Neil Diamond, and he was coming out of the cubicle one day in the toilet as I was in there having a slash, and he went, "Chris, come in here," right? I thought, great, I'm going to get shagged. No, I didn't. I knew damn well I was going to get drugs, and that excited me. I was like, all right, mate, what have you got? He's like, have you heard of ice? I'm like, no, what is it? He says, it's, I said, no, I said, I've heard about it, mate. It's, apparently it sends people mental. Let me have some, right? And he tapped out this crystal, like a tiny little crystal, onto a piece of silver foil, or slide as it's called in the paraphernalia game, and he heated it up with a lighter, having shoved a rolled up banknote in my mouth. He said, just suck this. And I only took maybe one, maybe two sort of puffs of it. Didn't think nothing of it. Thought, that's overrated, isn't it? Went back to sit at my desk, twiddling my thumbs the afternoon like we were doing, thinking, shall I drink, 15 cups of coffee a day, or maybe just keep it at 14? And suddenly, just started to feel this enormous sense of well-being. Just like, it was like getting drunk on the finest champagne, but without that kind of cloudy, heavy, disassociated feel. It was just nice. It felt like a million angels were just running up and down my back. It was just, oh man. And I sat there clock watching, because we weren't allowed to. I think we worked from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. And I'm clock watching. I thought, the second that clock strikes 8, I'm up, I'm out of here, I'm running to the MTR station, the underground. I'm going to dive through the doors of that carriage, get out, go under the harbour, get out Kowloon side, that's the mainland side, the Kowloon Peninsula, get out in Chim Sa Choi, the first station. I'm going to then dive into Chungking Mansions, which is kind of you call it like the immigrant ghetto in Hong Kong. It's these, I think it's 4 aging skyscrapers, all kind of joined up in like a quadrangle, and you have to get an ancient lift to get up them. And I knew a chap up there I bought some weed from, a Ghanaian immigrant. Oh, sorry, that's my phone going off. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, this Ghanaian immigrant called Mark. And that was it. I started to score this crystal meth. And at first it was like once a week, it was just irresistible. When you come from like I couldn't have had this conversation with you at the time, right? Because I didn't understand. I wasn't educated. I hadn't spent 5.5 years in university like I have now. I hadn't traveled 85 countries across all 7 continents then. I hadn't written 6 books. I hadn't run across the Sahara Desert or rowed across the Atlantic. I was like a lot of people, pretty sort of naive, really. But I guess what I was doing was medicating my childhood trauma. This deep down sense of unease, this kind of deep down nervousness that we now know as PTSD, but nobody talked about it then. I didn't even know what depression or anxiety was because I'd never had it, and no one had ever sort of sat me down and said, "Do you know what, Chris? You come from a really damaged childhood, don't you? One day, mate, you're going to start medicating for that with drugs or alcohol, probably both. It's not going to be pretty. Then you're going to be going into the realms of depression, anxiety, come down, mental health. Then things are going to get really, really hairy for you. But it's going to be all right, right? No one ever had that conversation with you. It would just, drugs is bad. That's it. That's the end of that conversation. Fucking unhelpful, isn't it? When it's something that mankind has always done, and that alcohol's the worst one. I can tell you that because I'm a substance misuse specialist. There's nothing that messes people up more than certainly in the long term, than alcohol. So that was what I was doing. I started once a week, and then it went to twice a week, and I'd stay up all night. I'd be like writing and drawing and painting and all this stuff, and I was finding out like I was quite good at it. It's stuff they told me I failed at school. And then I started to work in the nightclub area, and then it became a case of, I'm tired tonight going into work. Shit, I'll just go and I'll call a mate who might have something. And I'd go round to like a Filipina's house. There's a lot of Filipino girls in Hong Kong doing, either domestic work, or a lot of them, they cheat their visas so they can work in the nightclubs as like hostesses or bar girls or whatever. So, I'd find someone that had crystal meth, or I'd nip over to a chap I knew called Mac, who lived in Happy Valley, which is quite ironic because I ended up quite unhappy. Happy Valley, where the race course is in Hong Kong, and I'd score, and then I'd, if I was rushing to work, I'd go in the toilet and work. Didn't have time to smoke any, so I'd just crush up like a crystal with my credit card, snort it for a banknote, make sure I was tidy. Then I'd go and work on the door all night, at very high, but high in the initial stages. You're very cool with it, everything feels so controlled. You feel so supreme. And I'd finish work on the door at the end of the night, and I'd be like, taking the rubbish out or helping the staff clear away the glasses and stuff. And you'd see like a couple of blokes that have been eyeing you, giving you the eye all night, and you're thinking, oh, fucking hell, this is going to be trouble, And then you'd steel yourself like, oh, God, they're waiting outside for me, This is a military thing. This is PTSD for you. This is military mindset, is they're going to attack me. Let's get ready for a fight, And they'd come up and go, mate, sorry to interrupt you, but we just wanted to say we was watching in that club there tonight, and we were just saying you look so professional in what you do. And thanks for a great night, mate. And you're like, fucking hell. Cheers, lads. Other blokes would come up, shake your hand, and there'd be like $100 in your hand, That's only 10 quid, but that's quite a lot of money, 20 odd years ago. So that I was Mr. Cool. In one night, I got invited to a Harley Davidson party. I got invited to the US consulate with the Marines who loved me. The US Marines in Hong Kong always used to come up for a chat on the door. And I got invited by the Peter Stuyvesant crew who work for Peter Stuyvesant. Every time they come in the club, they give me 200 Marlboro. Just for me, no one else in the club. Obviously, I'd share them out with all the staff. And I just thought I'd come home, Frankie. I thought I found this wonder drug. I'm finally, possibly getting that recognition that we all feel we need, but we don't feel we're ever going to get or don't deserve. And, had my fair share of girls and this kind of thing. And then one day it just went all wrong. And a very bizarre incident happened. It was the first of many, many utterly bizarre, almost unexplainable things that happened. And cut a long story short, it culminated with me. I lived in this rundown tenement block. I used to pride myself that only a guy like me could live in this, decrepit mansion house. It was only Chinese that lived there. It was a very poor, rundown area of Wan Chai, or between Wan Chai and Causeway Bay. It was the kind of thing you'd see in a Bruce Lee film, Yeah. Back then, you would get the proverbial Chinese running up and down the street, pulling a barrow full of, junk or rubbish or cardboard boxes with the black pajamas and the wide brim hat. People laugh when I say that. They think, oh yeah, but no, that people still wore the chonsom, the immaculate satin suit. I lived. It was like living in a Bruce Lee movie, and my flat was right on the top floor. And I could get out. I could go out my window, climb up the waste pipe, which went all the way to the roof. So this is how off my head was. I'm living in I don't know how many floors were in there, but probably about 30 to 50. It was, it was a tenement block. And I'd climb out my window, like 70 meters above the ground, climb up a fucking old waste pipe to get onto the roof. And then I'd go and practice my kung fu and stuff, right? So one time I went up there and I was so unwell by this stage. I'd even been fired by the triads because I just couldn't function properly. And there was a wire cable that went from our tenement block right the way to the roof on the other side. And there was a water pipe, plastic cuff to it, with plastic cuffs like every foot sort of thing. Mm. And you had a lot of these weird arrangements in Hong Kong. A lot of people the homeless people live on the rooftops. So it wouldn't be unusual, to run water from here to there or whatever the case might be. But I got it in my head that all my commando training was for this moment. And there used to be a woman that lived opposite, and through the frosted glass of a window, she used to do her hair in the mirror. And the hairbrush in the silhouette, it looked like a microphone. And in my head, I got this voice in my head going, it's not over till the fat lady sings, Chris. It's not over till the fat lady sings. And this kind of like inner voice, not like, it's not like God's talking to you or something. It's like this inner monologue, in silent, but it's in there, and it's going, Chris, your commando training was for this moment, mate. You got to crawl across that wire. You got to see the fat lady, and then it's all over when she sings. And you're going to find out who you are, what this life is about. When you get over there, everybody like you ever knew, all the, people that fired you, people you're falling out with, people you met in the nightclubs, all your Marine, but they're all over. They're waiting for you, mate. They're all waiting for you, And this was, psychologically, that's probably not too hard to analyze. I was still a damaged, broken toddler. I still got that psyche in my head. I'm looking to be loved, aren't I? And I believed if I can get across this cable, I'm going to find that. I'm going to find acceptance. And stupidly, I started crawling across it. And I'm looking down at the street, and there's people like ants down there. And I'm thinking, fuck, I wonder if they're looking up at me, thinking, and then I started thinking, I wonder what they're thinking. They must think I'm crazy. And And then suddenly I'm lying on this cable, you know, like we was taught in training, and I'm thinking, I thought about my little brother, you know, who I love my little brother. When we was going to one of these horrible schools up in the north, up in Lincolnshire, another, you know, my parents separated three times, I think we went up there to live. So I went to 6 schools, but by the time I got to comprehensive, that was my 6th school. And one school, they had this rule that the big kids couldn't be in the little kids' playground. And I was like, no one's telling me I can't see my little brother, you know? So we used to sit on the steps between the playground. I'd sit halfway up, he'd sit halfway down. And, you know, it wasn't so lonely and everything, being with your parents getting divorced and being in this strange land with strange people talking in a strange accent. Even the water tasted fucking foul, you know? Anyway, I thought about my brother. I thought, fucking hell, he doesn't even know I'm here. I haven't spoke to him in a year. He don't know what I'm doing. He definitely doesn't know I'm on a cable crawling between 2 fucking skyscrapers. And that was it. It just triggered something inside me, and I thought, fucking hell, Chris, what are you doing? This cable could snap at any minute. And when you spiral down and, you know, 70 meters to your death, they're not going to tell your little brother that you was showing the world what you're capable of because you're fucking fearless, dude. They're going to say that you ended up as a druggie in Hong Kong and you threw yourself off a skyscraper. And yeah, okay, I might have been a druggie in Hong Kong, but I still had self-respect, you know? I still, you know, I was as good as anyone else. I wasn't going to fucking kill myself. And in that moment, I just like burst into tears, Frankie. You know, it was, in hindsight, it was probably my first nervous breakdown. And I was just crying my fucking eyes out, and the tears were like dripping out my eyes. And it looked like paratroopers from the Herc, you know, just dropping down into this void. And I crawled back off the cable, went back to my room, and then I just got mad. I got really mad, and I smashed everything up. Even this beautiful ornate black lacquer box with mother of pearl inlay with this Chinese scene on it. And I loved it. You know, it made me feel, you know, like I'm living in a block with Chinese. I work for the 14K Chinese. I felt Chinese, you know. I could speak quite a bit of the language as well, or certainly could back then. And that was it. That was it. I come back to the UK. I won't even, you know, if anyone wants to learn more, I say read, eat, and smoke. It's all in there. And I was a mess for 18 months. I couldn't get off the gear. Didn't want to get off the gear. Didn't want to live without it. I thought you still clinging to that notion. This is making me me. This is the real me. You know, okay, I might die a bit younger, but who cares? This is living. And then one day, cut a very long story short, but I woke up. I was on a massive come down. I woke up in my boxer shorts in the middle of the living room floor. My house was absolutely trashed, which had happened over the 18 months. I gradually trashed everything, not meaning to, but it just got that way. I had about 87p in my pocket, which usually would do me for a 2-week shop, especially if I shoplifted some stuff as well. But in this case, I was going to go down and get a pasty from the corner shop, and I couldn't go out the door. I looked at myself, you know, I was like a 13.5 stone bodybuilder in the Marines. When I used to walk in the office in the Marines, the lads would fucking piss themselves laughing because it was fucking ridiculous, mate. My fucking arms were like that. Honestly, I'm not, you know, bigging myself up. I'm just saying I definitely want that guy anymore. I definitely want driving a BMW and having a mobile phone when nobody knew what they were. Certainly didn't have an international business. I definitely didn't wake up with like girls' phone numbers in my pocket after a night out. I'm there. I've got track marks up my arm. I'm emaciated. I'm eating all I ate was porridge and pasta mixed together with 20 spoons of sugar. There's as much milk as I could spare, which wasn't a lot, because I'd spend all my money on amphetamine. And the clothes I was wearing, I'd nicked off a heroin dealer when he'd ripped me off for some speed one time. So I stole all his clothes and his sleeping bag. And I could hear the kids playing football in the street. And I knew if I went out, they'd be like, Chris, play football with us. So I'm like, I felt a million miles from that, Frankie. You know, I felt shell-shocked. I thought, fucking, I can't go out. I can't face anyone. People are going to go, Chris, are you all right these days? You're not, do you know what I mean? You're not that fucking cool young Marine that moved in here, 5 years ago or whatever. Something's not right, mate, innit? And then of course it wasn't right. I was severely, having, the result, this is childhood PTSD for you, right? So cut a long story short, nervous breakdown about number 6 by that time. I burst out crying. I fucking thought about that little toddler and all the shit I went through as a kid that, I didn't deserve. And, adults were fucking very abusive back then, or a lot of them were, including school teachers. And I thought, do you know what, Chris, they might have done that. They might have like battered you around when you was a kid. But who's doing that to you now, mate? You're fucking doing it to yourself, dude. Why? And in that moment, Frankie, it just hit home. Fuck. I've done this to myself. I've done it. No one, I could blame that. But no, I've done this. Oh, shit. And I thought about that little kid that I was, and I thought, fucking you poor little boy, you just didn't deserve that, and I'm still doing it to you, mate. I'm still fucking doing it to you. I'm so sorry. I'm so, so sorry. Listen, I'm going to do a deal here. I'm going to cut this shit down, yeah? I'm not going to be a fucking angel. Don't expect me to be. But I can see I've got to cut this down, haven't I? I need to get my life back. And I made a promise that when I woke up, I'd crash for days on end. I used to just watch daytime TV, eating either like 8 slices of toast at a time, the cheapest white bread for 17p a loaf, or this porridge and pasta bought in bulk for, the white label that they sell in a supermarket own brand, And when I woke up the next time, I decided I'm going to throw open the curtains. I'm not going to live in the darkness. I'm going to say, morning, son. Thank you so much for giving me this life. A lot of my mates are dead now. They can't be here to enjoy this, but I'm still here, and I'm going to live for them, So what was I doing? I was showing gratitude. I thought the past, I'm going to forgive everyone, because what's the fucking point living in the past? They didn't know any better. The people that hurt me, they was probably getting battered themselves as kids, probably thought it was normal. That's what they have to live with. And so I'll forgive them all, and I'm never going to think about that again. Next thing, I'm going to take action. Instead of spending all of me bloody gyro on gear, I'm just going to take a tenner, buy one wrap of speed, or one bag, and when it's gone, which it will be after a night, then it's gone. And I don't care, even if I have to sleep for 2 weeks, that's what I do to put distance between me and that. And when I woke up, I threw open the curtains. I said, morning, son. Thank you so much for this life. And I felt groggy as hell and awful. And normally I just crawl back to sleep or watch some data. No, get up, make yourself a cup of tea, mate. Got up, made a pint of tea. Not crystal meth, not amphetamine, just a cup of tea, and actually enjoyed it. It felt good to do something boring but really normal, and that was that. And as a result of those 3 things that I now teach in my life coaching: let the past go, it doesn't exist, be grateful, take action, brought me paradise, mate. 85
mean,
countries.
that's a fucking, it's a hard thing to do. I mean, anyone listening to that may not understand that. I mean, the thing that goes back to me there, when you were on the cable, and your mind made you think of your brother. It's not. I mean, the journey I've gone through recently was where your mind can do amazing things. It can fuck you up, but it also try. I mean, initially, it's there to protect you as well, and it will try and protect you. It'll make you think of this. It'll make you think of that. Your subconscious will bring things up and say this, that, the other, to protect you from other thoughts, and that can manifest in people with as OCD, as like think of that instead of remembering the bad bits. And you to say that you woke up that day, opened the curtains, and the thoughts that you initially had the night before saying, do this, do that, do this, that's probably part of your subconscious as well, saying, look, you need to sort your own shit out. And it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing for anyone to grasp, and the process for you to go from then to like where you are now. I mean, I wouldn't want anyone to think, oh, well, he's opened the curtains and it's fucking great now. The process is going to take for years, isn't it?
Yes, it's been a journey, mate. It's been a journey of enlightenment. If you'd said that to me back when I was in, I wouldn't have known what the fuck you were talking about. I'd have thought you meant that I've got to be a Buddhist monk or something and go and chant in a monastery and some utter shite, No, all it means is it's just recognizing if you try and run your life out your ego, it's gonna fucking end in tears because we're shit, We're so easily tempted. The devil's always on your shoulder with something to offer you, whether it's drugs, alcohol, fast car, fast women, new house, new job role, and all this materialistic shit that means nothing. And what I essentially done that day, even though I didn't know it, is I was connecting with spirit. I was saying, listen, my ways failed. Life, some people call that God, universe, spirit. What help me here. I'm willing to accept I can't do this. And I've never been to any self-help group. I've never been to any church. I'm fiercely independent. I'm fiercely proud of my drug history. I live in paradise, and if anyone ever meets my little boy, you'll understand I've made all the right decisions in life. To think if I'd done anything differently, I wouldn't have him now. Don't bear thinking about, I've even got a nice cat now, and I don't even like cats. I don't hate them, but I'm not like a cat person. It's my girl. She's beautiful. She's such a good heart, and she's seen me in fucking states like shit faced after just drinking a bottle of rum, crying my fucking eyes out on the floor, and she doesn't even lecture me for it. She knows that I know that she knows I know what's right and what's wrong, and she just gives me that free space to get it right, and yeah, it's a funny thing, and the reason that veterans struggle so much and that the suicide rate is high and the mental health and the alcohol and the drugs and the homelessness and all of it is, we're in a massively ego-fueled job. You've only got to fucking listen to two squaddies fucking talking, or Marine, it's like, fucking how old are you, for fuck's sake? That was like 40 years ago, fellas, and you're still talking about it. Have you not done anything with your lives? Honestly, I think they still think they're fucking oiling their SLRs and all their Enfield 303s and polishing their, buffing their boots and stuff. And it's not a judgment. It's just, it's all ego. And your identity doesn't lie in a job that you did when you were 18. And if you think it does, you're going to struggle because you ain't that person now, and life's moved on, and you're only what only matters is what you do today. And what you do today has got to be kind. It's got to be humble. It's got to be done for the best of humanity. It's got to be done, for the family. It's got to be done what's right, even though, we're all tempted. And you got to be honest. I'm honest. I tell people my story. I'm acutely aware there's people out there probably just gobsmacked that because they're still living in that little bubble that was created for them by other people, basically, and by life. And they're not free. They're slaves to the matrix, as we call it. And this is why the veterans struggle, is they're clinging to identity. And if you identify as a human, whether that's a soldier or what, you're missing a bigger picture. We're the universe experiencing itself subjectively through these bodies respectively. That's primarily we're universe experiencing itself.
I mean, I agree with you there to a certain extent. So for a lot of veterans, their formative years have been brought up in the military. That age of I joined at 16. So 16 to say 24 is where you become an adult. You become more mature. But you learn so much there. But like you say, you're in that bubble. For example, when we left the military and moved outside of the wire, the first house we moved into, I remember that night the police cars were going past, and I was like, "What the fuck's going on?" And now, 12 years later, police cars go past. It's normal, sirens and stuff. But listening to it on that first couple of nights, where the police were in the street, you was, "What the fuck's going on?" Because you're just not used to it, and it's hard to adjust. And to get out of that bubble, some people find it very, very hard. Not everybody, not everybody has issues when they leave the military, but some of us do. But sometimes it doesn't manifest till years later because you don't realise that there's something wrong until years later. And then you've got to deal with it. Some people don't get the right help. Some people don't know they need help. You obviously did know you needed help there and helped yourself. But so your road to recovery, I mean, who did you approach, or did you not approach anyone? Did you do it all yourself?
Gosh, what a good question. So I'm sort of like fiercely independent. To me, asking, don't expect no contradictions here. Do you know what I mean? Life is a contradiction. We're always telling people, reach out for help. Well, I tried that. I used to get really kind of desperate, on a come down, and I think, I'll call up my old mate, old Smudge. Yeah, we was always good mates in the military. Yeah, you're right. Oh, and in fact, to be honest, picking a Marine is not a good example, because even if they didn't understand it, they'd be there for you, But I remember calling a Matlow mate of mine. We was actually in business. He was in my business back in the day, or involved in it. And I always thought of him as a good guy. People spoke highly of this guy, and that's why I was pleased I was in business with him. And I called him up, and he's like, "Oh, all right, Chris, I thought you were in Hong Kong." I said, "No, mate, I've been back, best part of a year now." And he said, "Oh, how is it then?" I said, "Oh, to be honest, it's not good, mate. I got sort of involved in drugs over there and developed a bit of a problem, and I'm just phoning up for a bit of advice, dude, He's like, "All right. Okay, Chris. Yeah. Chris, listen, I've just got to go now, mate. Yeah, I've got to go. You're just going to look after yourself, mate. I'm going to pop in and see you. I'm going to pop and see you."
Yeah.
Obviously I never fucking heard from him again. And, I tried going to the medical community about different things. and they didn't get it. They just like literally didn't get. All they could do is open their sort of textbook and come out with something trite. There was just like fucking nothing to do with me, and so I just did it. You know, I did it my way, but I'm not saying people should do it my way. I'm just saying this is how I did it.
Yeah.
If I was someone out there now, if you got them problems, go that there's groups now that aren't so kind of what can you say? Back in the day, it used to just be the 12-step program, didn't it? Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous, and like none of that's for me because, well, I mean, I'm a social scientist and I spent 5.5 years at uni in the social sciences, biology, psychology, sociology, youth work, social work. And I sort of see addiction for what it is now. It's a learned condition, usually born out of unresolved childhood trauma and the need to, the feeling of needing to self-medicate that insecurity. And then that self-medicating becomes a cozy comfort blanket. So you seek more of it and more of it. And then the more you have a high, you have a low. So your life is spiraling out of control. So you just drink more because you think you're going to put it right, or you take more drugs. And of course it spirals more and more. And this is how people lose everything, lose their family, lose their house, lose their mental health, end up on the street, right? So if you can learn an unhelpful behavior, then you can unlearn it. But I'm not saying it's easy. It's been a lifelong venture for me, Frankie, even to the point where after that Atlantic Row, especially like the amount I drunk in Barbados, it put everything on a fucking downer, mate. I'm telling you, because it if you know, you know.
Yeah.
If you know, you know. I could have been up at 5 o'clock in the morning here. Everyone says to me, I bet that row took a lot out. Did it fuck? You got to be committed to row across the Atlantic. You got to want to do it. You got to put training in, raise an awful lot of money. You got to pull on them oars at the end of the day. But a lot of people can do those things if that's what they decide, right? So I wasn't in the pain cave because I just rowed across the Atlantic. I was in the pain cave because the day that we landed, I went in a bar and drank so much I fucking fell over and smashed my head through the coffee table. Right? That meant that I didn't get up at 5 the next morning like I usually would, put my running shoes on and go running around the island, seeing some new sights and saying hello to people, coming home to have a lovely breakfast with the family and planning a day out. No, it meant that I'm lifting my head at 4 in the morning, going out the fridge, getting the bottle of rum out and having a big swig of that before going back to bed. Then maybe lifting my head again at 9 o'clock and you want something to eat, honey? Yeah. Just fucking cook me a load of shit, anything to shove in my food. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And what does it do? Well, alcohol's a depressant. And if you binge drink, you're binging on depression. And I don't mean like clinical. I mean, for some people, it will be clinical depression. For me, it's never anything like that. I got a bottom dollar and that's paradise. I'm always in paradise. But I can really fuck up paradise, believe me, and make it just barely paradise, And so yeah, what I'm trying to say is it's been a lifelong sort of thing for me, this, but obviously stopping myself being mentally unwell was a big thing. Stopping myself injecting drugs 12, 20 times a day was a big thing. Stopping class A drugs altogether, or, never say never, but I can't fucking remember the last time I went down that road. And now I'm left with, the occasional binge drink, usually when I'm around sort of veterans. And they probably have the night out, go home, sleep it off, and eat pizza in front of Netflix the next day. I don't. I can't do hangovers. I go down to Co-op, buy myself 6 cans of beer, and I'll sit and probably drink 4 of them to know the hangover. Then I'll drink a couple the next day, and it's okay. It's it's not okay. It's bad behavior, but I don't know if I'm making sense, Frankie.
No, you're making perfect sense, mate. You're making perfect sense. I know exactly what you mean. I wouldn't say I've been through the same process, but in all honesty, I've always drank too much.
Can I just say, sorry, so people don't get the wrong impression? My bottom dollar these days is alcohol free. I'm never like a black and white person. I'm never like, right, that's it, I'm never drinking again, although I have said that quite a few times. And
we've all said that at some point.
But I have been for 2 years without drinking. Currently, I haven't had a drink for a month. I'm not planning on having a drink probably ever, unless circumstance change. Once it's a poison and you have an issue with it, and I know a lot of people don't. I'm not talking to them now. Fucking fine. If you want to drink, I was smashed for 30 years. Fine. I don't care. I'm talking about me, my life. I know I'm not the same person either when I'm drunk or when I'm hungover, and that's not a good example to have around the people that you love most in the world. So I really struggle I really strive not to live that life now. Occasionally I might go back on it if it's if it's some sort of a weekend a bit, you could say. But I'm much better at it now. I'm much better at catching it before it sort of spirals into something. So yeah, that's it. And also I live now, and I know this probably won't make sense to a lot of people, but I'm an enlightened being. What happened to me that day when the light was shining through the window was I'd stepped from the material world of thinking it's all about me, my ego, my car, my job, to realizing none of that, that's just
none of that matters. Yeah,
tokenistic stuff. What is important is my connection with spirit, which is just the eternal energy. Recognizing that ultimately there is just energy. We're in an energy system, and that this meat suit you see in front of you is a temporary. It's the universe temporarily experiencing itself through this mechanism that people mistakenly refer to as Chris. But I don't actually exist any more than you do, because if you looked at my skin cells, you'll realize they check every 3 years. They're completely different, and it's I'm in a different place. But what I can tell you is, when you feel spirit, it's fucking great. It's a lovely, floaty, nice feeling. And this is why people are doing the Wim Hof, the cold plunge in the morning, the sauna. This is why they're doing, the breathing, the running, because in that moment you get so clear-headed that you just connect with everything that's right, and you feel what our natural human state is. These are just stuff that when we lived in the forests for hundreds of thousands of years, probably millions of years through our evolution, we would have got wet. We would have done breathing because we were constantly moving, looking for new grounds to gather our food. And when you live in that state, it's a beautiful thing, So I strive for it.
It's weird that you mentioned that, because that at the moment I'm doing a course, because I've been doing these podcasts and stuff, and I know I've mentioned it before on these podcasts. People who listen to them will think, "Oh, will you shut up going on at the work?" But what I decided to do was do a course that was offered to me free, And I thought, well, I'll give it a go. It's the self-harm and suicide awareness course. And I'm just coming to the close of it. I'm just on my final assessment now. And we're talking about the stages of grief and how to deal with grief and support someone who's suffered bereavement through suicide or whatever. And the biggest proponent that benefits everybody is a healthy lifestyle. And to me, thinking about a healthy lifestyle was just like, yeah, fucking hell, cut the drink down, do this, do that. But it's not at all encompassing. It's, exercise. Christ, and I don't do any. Maybe I should. Healthy lifestyle, emotional stability, eating right, sleeping properly, that healthy lifestyle, and it brings on an emotional stability for the person herself, and helps against depression, anxiety, codependent ailments like what you had, the depression, alcoholism, and drug abuse, and stuff like that. So, I mean, promoting spirituality or whatever you want to call it, if somebody wants to call it faith or whatever, it's something that enlightens yourself, makes you feel good, then albeit, that healthy lifestyle's got to come from within. You've got to do it. You've got to start experiencing it, for want of a better word. I'm trying to put what you said in my words, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, in enlightenment circles, they call it hermeticism, which comes from an ancient philosopher called Hermes, who actually was I believe is a fictional character made up of a combination of Greek gods and Roman gods and Babylonian sun gods and this sort of thing. But anyway, the reason we say hermetic seal, if something's sealed hermetically, nothing can get into it, is you're when you live as an enlightened person, that is what you're trying to maintain. They encapture this in the film Star Wars. They call it the Force. Like when you live the right way and you think the right way, you develop this almost like this it's not like a sixth sense, but it's a sixth way of being. And it's called, in esoterics, it's called hermeticism. And it means that if you can fight the spiritual battle, keep the devil and the temptation away. I say devil, I use this term, euphemistically. If you can say no to the alcohol, if you can stay on an alkaline diet so that your pH is natural, the way as if we lived in the nature, we wouldn't be eating these excesses and drinking to excess of all this food substance that basically creates excess sugar in our body, or glucose, and that toxifies our system. All these refined carbohydrate. If you were to eat rice in the nature or wheat or something, probably take you a year to gather a bowl of the freaking stuff. Now, because of factory farming, you can eat that bowl in 3 times a day if you want. And of course, it's unnatural to have that much amount of carbs, because it creates sugar, glucose, and we know that in the body, sugars are highly acidic, so acidic that they rot through the teeth enamel. So what happens is, so you cut out the temptation, you live a frugal diet, eat a frugal diet. You get on good terms with all people, because you don't want like malice in your life. You live in the present like we would in the nature. We'd be gathering, we'd be working on our project. The only time we'd come out of that blissful state is if we got attacked by a predator or something. We'd fend it off or escape. When that threat's gone, we go back to harmony again. Not like the life we've got where we're constantly in a stressful state because we're worrying about that Facebook post we made, or that we upset someone in a workplace because we said, man, you are shit. And now we're worrying if maybe they took offense to that. And then is your boss going to call you in tomorrow and say, Chris, your fucking work's not good enough, mate. Fuck off. And you got a mortgage to pay and kids to feed. And then you're watching, you put the TV on to escape, and it's a fucking horror movie, or it's some bullshit about some fucking made up illness that we're all going to fucking die of next week, and you're under all that stress, and then your car won't bloody start, and you're thinking, oh shit, that's a 560 quid bill, and it's so totally unnatural. We're flooded with cortisol all day, the stress hormone, and your hermeticism is your mindfulness, your meditation, to get rid of all that stress, to not think about it, to be here in and now and think, look, everything's perfect. Right now, as I talk to you, nothing to worry about, is there? You know, the roof ain't going to fall on me head. No one's going to smash me front door in and make me pregnant. It's nothing to fucking worry, you know, and yet we worry so much. We worry about the past, and that's like guilt, isn't it? And depression. Or we worry about the future, and that's anxiety. And we're never taught to just be here, be still, like you're that creature in the forest, just gathering your hazelnuts and picking your roots, your shoots, and your leaves, and that's called hermeticism. And you know, we have to recreate that, like I say, because we're not in the forests, we're not getting wet in a rain shower, so we do the cold water immersion. We're not eating this frugal diet, so we got to stay away from the excesses. We're on good terms with people because we live in a tribe, and you have to get on with people because the tribe relies on its, you know, is only as strong as its weakest sort of member. And all these things, if we can recreate that in our life, you develop this seal. And when you're in that seal, you're in an enlightened state. Your body is physically resonating at a higher frequency than when you're shit, you know. Proof's in the pudding. If you go out the front door in the morning and you smile at people, they smile, then they go away thinking, oh, that bloke just said good morning to me, and, you know, I was having a bad day, you know, things are a bit better now. And they go home and call a friend they haven't spoke to for ages, or they, you know, give their kids a hug. And, you know, it's called raising the frequency. You know, that's where I'm at. But the biggest thing to kind of fuck that up is it's the alcohol, because you're physically poisoning this system that you've cleansed and you've purified, and you're getting to resonate at this frequency. Boom, the alcohol just kills all that dead, which is called, you know, being drunk or having a hangover.
Yeah, and many of them. So what got you into doing like so you ran from, you know, the length of Britain, and you've run like the desert marathon and other things that you've done for charity. How did you move into all that then?
So probably all for the wrong reasons. When you're down on your luck on drugs, you're treated like a subhuman. Not by everyone, but by most people. And people think it's fine to call you smackhead or crackhead or, you know, junkie. You know, this is the evilness of the society we live in. Is we think that
people don't understand. I'm guilty of that as much as anybody. You know, it's only recently that when people ring me, I started answering the phone. For years, I didn't. You know, I just thought, oh, for fuck's sake. You know, and I've got a good friend now who rings up and asks, you know, and all he wants to do is talk. That's all he needs to do is talk, and that helps him. Like you said, you know, you're paying it forward type of thing. But I do think that a lot of people just don't understand, and it's not through malice that they try to avoid smackheads or drunks or, you know, like you mentioned earlier about your friend in the Royal Navy. It's not malicious thought. It's not like, oh shit. It's a lack of understanding and empathy. If you know what I mean.
It's, you know, to anyone out there listening, if picture the person you love the most in the world. Picture them now, and I'm sorry, block your ears if you're easily sensitive or whatever, but, you know, now picture them with cancer and like 1 month to live. And then picture someone coming in your house and going, oh, hello, you know, Madge or Steve, I didn't know you was a cancer. You'd be like, what the fuck did you just call my wife, my son, did you just call them a cancer? Yeah, well, they're a fucking cancer, aren't they? You'd knock their fucking head off, right? And yet it's perfectly fine to say, oh yeah, Chris is a fucking smackhead, or he's a junkie, or he's a crackhead, or he's an alkie. This is why, you know, you'd never get me going to AA. There's no fucking way. You can call me a legend, world traveller, qualified pilot, qualified skydiver, Antarctic explorer, best-selling author, inspirational veteran of the year, former Royal Marines Commando, combatant, top podcast, award-winning podcast host, record breaker. You got a good pick there of things to describe me. Why the fuck do you choose like the most negative one? You know? And I'm saying this so people can like think about that a bit. Imagine if someone come to your loved one and called them that, right? Why is it unacceptable to label someone with cancer by their illness? But if someone's battling mental health, in this case addiction, it's fine to label them by that. You know, there's no difference. You don't choose to become addicted to drugs. It's a psychological condition born out of basic, being battered when you was a kid. If you go off to Afghanistan to fight in an illegal conflict to make the bankers even more fucking rich than they already are, right? Because you're a naive, dumb fucking squaddy or young Marine or whatever, and you're getting paid handsomely to do it, you get your legs blown off, you come back a hero. The fact that you willingly volunteer to go and drop fucking, bombs on goat herders to make the Rothschilds even more richer than they already are, right? And those goat herders done fuck all to you or your family. You get branded a hero and you get given medals, and they're like, oh, look, he lost a leg in Africa. You get battered to fuck as a toddler, or raped, or, have cigarettes stubbed out on you. And as an adult, you struggle to deal with that because we now know that's called PTSD. And you self-medicate because it's the only way you can deal with the pain and the feeling of being different from everybody. Then you're scum of fucking society, So willing, and I'm being facetious here. I don't mean to upset anyone, Frankie. I was a serviceman,
No, I understand exactly what you said. And
I'm just saying.
I understand where it's coming from and what you're saying.
Yeah, what a weird society we live in, where if you willingly volunteer to go and drop bombs on kids, you're labelled a hero. But if you get battered and have cigarettes stubbed out on you as a child, you're a junkie fucking smackhead cunt. We live in an utterly brainwashed society, and this isn't like sour grapes or nothing, mate. I'm saying it because there'll be people listening now that go, fucking hell, Chris, I'd never thought of it like that before, mate. You're fucking right, aren't you? Now I understand. I get people come up to me at reunions and they're going, you fucking done all them drugs, Chris, didn't you? You fucking, and it's like they want me to fucking explain myself to them. And then, do you know what it is? It's that their kids had a drug problem. And rather than look in their mirror and go, do you know what? I was in the fucking mob all the time my kids were growing up. I was fucking in Norway or Northern Ireland or Kosovo or, thinking I was Jack the Lad, fucking what a fucking hero, not knowing I was just mentally neglecting my children back home who had to grow up and see me at, 3 months of the year. Little boy who fucking idolizes their dad has to then wonder, is he coming back this time, or is some combatant going to blow my dad's fucking head off, So I lost my train of thought.
I do that to people sometimes.
Yeah, no.
I mean, if we can get back on track, we'll go back to the running from the length of Britain.
Okay. So I was just trying to lay the table there for.
Yeah.
Imagine the hardest thing for me with addiction. It wasn't the starving. It wasn't, shoving needles in my arm. It wasn't being skinned. It wasn't getting caught shoplifting. Although that was fucking embarrassing. Managed to get away with it, but Jesus Christ, none of that. I could handle all that, even like sitting on a come down for fucking 4 days, watching daytime TV and shoving shit in your face and feeling like death. I could handle all that. The hard thing is the judgment that you get, you know, the judgment. And when I was like picking myself up, I'd be like, I remember I was filling the car up once with petrol, and I'm driving this crappy old mini Metro. It's probably like 20 years old already. You remember back then cars used to rust, didn't they? You don't see that now because everyone buys new cars all the time. But used to have this thing called rusty cars. And so I'm driving this old banger, and lo and behold, who pulls into the petrol station? But one of the kids used to be in my class at school. Used to be a rugby player, and little clue there. Anyway, he pulls in like, yeah, he wasn't fucking lording it or nothing. He was probably just living his life, but he had a bloody lovely car, as you probably do when you've worked hard all your life, and you was a switched on kiddie anyway. I was never them things, you know. I am feeling like a junkie, fucking person, because that's what you get. So here's the thing. I went back to like mulling it over, and I'm like, right, okay, what can I do so that when I walk in the proverbial pub and one of me mates like that is in there, who's on 30 grand a year, who's got, you know, their decent mortgage, who's, you know, happy families, 2 little blonde egg kids and all that shit, and they're, you know, playing golf at the weekend. There's me just like on the bones of my arse, trying to scrape my life back together. What can I do to not feel less of a person, Frankie, you know? And you got to remember, even though I'm on my enlightenment journey now, I'm still massively in the ego. Like, you know, image is important, and you know, and it's drummed into you in the Marines, aren't you? In the Marines, you're in the fucking elite. You know, these kind of very, very heavy programming. And so I thought, well, one thing I've done a lot is I've travelled. I've been lucky. By that stage, I'd been to about sort of 25 countries or something, you know, Barbados and Egypt and the States a couple of times, and you know, a bit of Europe, and been to Hong Kong 3 times, Thailand, China, Macau, and was actually a DJ in China for a bit. And I thought, do you know what? I'll fucking hammer the travelling. That's what I'll do. I'm going to travel to every single country that I want to. So I got a sort of globe out. I did actually have a 70s authentic light up globe that I bought at the car boot. But I think maybe it's more like in my sort of head, I pulled out the globe in my head. I thought, right, where am I going to go? And I'm thinking, you know, I'll backpack through every single country in the Americas. I'll dive on the Great Barrier Reef. I'll do a book signing on the Great Wall of China. I'll teach street children in Mozambique. I'll drive a bus from Norway to India, across the deserts and back with volunteers so we can write about people living in poverty. I'll travel to every country in Europe and snowboard down most of them mountains. You know, I'll ride up to the pyramids on a camel. Oh, I've done that, haven't I? You know, and all this stuff, I just went and did it. That was it. I started, I went to Norway to train to be a development instructor, and my project was in Mozambique. So I taught street kids, a place called Nakala Porto, idyllic little village on the edge of the Indian Ocean. And after that, they asked me, would I drive this bus to India with volunteer journalists? I said, would I drive a bus to India and back? Yes, I'll do that for you. You know, it's just absolutely brilliant. I went on my first world backpack. I backpacked through every single country in the Americas. I've been in Papillon's death cell in French Guiana. I've I got the second level commendation of the Finnish nation granted to me. So I got a medal in Finland for human generosity, which is just a story for another day. You know, driven around Australia, New Zealand, everything. And I wrote my book. Writing a book was like the cherry on the cake because, and this is wrong, but you know, you got to remember, I'm still coming out my ego now. So I'm thinking, right, mate, you might be on 30 grand a year and you're a fucking dentist, but have you written a number one bestseller? Actually, my book was number 2 bestseller, but it was number 1 bestseller in its class on Amazon. And that was, you know, it's that, again, it's that petty ego thinking, but that's what set me on this trip. So I've written this book. I'm flying through Heathrow
Did you find
Airport.
writing the book therapeutic?
No.
No.
Writing about losing a plot on drugs and being set up to be murdered by the 14K triads is probably re-traumatizing yourself. I didn't write it to be therapeutic because I didn't need any therapy. I didn't have anything to get over.
All right.
Which
Okay.
might sound hypocritical, might not make sense, but you got to remember, even though I'm feeling insignificant, I still fucking live my life my way, and I ain't done nothing wrong. You know, this is just a product of a childhood that I didn't really ask for. And yet, ironically, now at the grand age of 55, I wouldn't have changed anything. It's you know, very, very fortunate in my life, Frankie. But no, I wrote that book. I had mates say to me, "Oh, you're writing a book. I'll have a look at it and tell you if it's any good." And I'm like, "Fuck you," you know. Like I'm only gonna write a bestseller. You know, I'm not interested in writing like a shit book, am I? You know what I mean? Why would you want to write a fucking bestseller? Thank you very much. And when I went through Heathrow Airport and my book was on the bestseller list at that time in WH Smith's, it was like number 12 bestseller, one below Gary Neville, one above James Corden, and
A weird place to be.
Yeah, unlike James Corden, I didn't have to join the Illuminati to get my book fucking on the bestseller list. What am I saying? You know, I had a little metaphorical pat on the back at that moment. Said, "Well done, Frawley. You fucking did what you said you would do, mate." When they all called you junkie, fucking crackhead. You get called by all the drug names, even though it was crystal meth was a drug. So that was that. So I, in my mind, I've now achieved gold. I've achieved the cherry on the cake of life. I'm a best-selling author, right? And I'm not lauding it. I'm fucking just Chris Thrall. But, you know, when I walk in that bar now I can stand next to the guy on 30 grand a year with his fucking Volvo and his happy families and shake his hand and look him in the eye because I'm at the top of my profession too. I might not be making a lot of money from it, but you don't need to know that, you know? And so that was that. And then I got a mate message me, and I'd run the London Marathon by this stage, which was an incredible experience. I suggest anybody out there runs a marathon, even if you fucking walk the fucker, just do it. It's a life-changing event, right? My mate Jim Facebooks me. So it must have been around, you know, after 2012. He said, "Chris, have you heard of this guy, Dean Karnazes?" He said, he's called Marathon Man. He's written a book called Marathon Man. I think it's called Ultramarathon Man. And he's like, he doesn't just run a marathon. He runs like 300 miles in one go. I was like, you got to be kidding me. So immediately, this is the way my mind works. I buy that book on Amazon, don't I? You know, I want a piece of this, Frankie. This is exciting. This sounds cool. Little did you and the reason I say to people, take action, is ironically the world's most famous ultra runner, Dean Karnazes, is now my mate, right? And I was a fucking junkie, smackhead, crackhead. You know what I mean? Been on my podcast and everything, and So I read this book, very similar to other people that I've read, in as far as his life was going nowhere. So he just walked out the bar he was in with his mates and fucking ran 30 miles, you know? And very similar story to Anthony Robbins, the American self-help guy, you know? He did the same. He come home and found his house was repossessed. So he just kicked his shoes off and just ran along the beach, just to like take control of something, you know? So anyway, so I thought, right, okay, let's get out, do a bit of running. I used to go out running, like when my boy was born, we didn't do none of that, was it, pre-baby shit.
Prenatal, yeah.
Prenatal stuff, yeah. We were just like, can we take him home now, please? They're like, yeah, you can go. All right, go. We grabbed that little carry thing, ran out the hospital, got home. My girlfriend starts feeding him, looking utterly like, you know, in bliss. I said, do you mind if I'll go out running? She's like, no, you go, honey. So I went out and ran a marathon. I come home 5 hours later. And that was my training for my first, you know, I thought I'm going to do an ultra marathon. And I used to go running. I'd run like sometimes 35 mile. And I'd run past a corner shop on the way back. I'd take my bank card tucked in my pocket and I'd go and buy some rum and cokes and, you know, or can of strong beer, drink that, and then I'd run the last bit home. So, yeah, I'm saying this, I'm just saying, people out there, don't wait for perfection, folks. Go and live you know.
Just do it.
I've got pretty shit facing off my head in lots of different places around the world, doing lots of different. The only exception is I never drank when I flew, for obvious reasons. You know, not even I'm that stupid. Or when I skydive. But fast forward, I've seen this race come up, a 24-hour race. So I just put in for it, rocked up, made a load of homemade vegan pasties to fuel me, and I ran for 24 hours, and I even got my head down for 5 hours, and so in 19 hours I was still able to run 76 miles.
Wow.
One of the guys, Gavin, that I was doing the final laps with, he said, I'm training to run the joggle, the length John O'Groats to Land's End. I was like, oh, okay. I've seen a guy on Facebook was sort of doing that, you know. So I bought a little lightweight tent. I bought a lightweight sleeping bag. Then I put my back out, which screwed things up for 18 months. But when I felt like I could run again, I didn't even do any training. I just bought a ticket to John O'Groats, went up there, put on a 15-kilo Bergen with all my camping gear and all the stuff I thought I needed. I had to get rid of a load of it. It was ridiculous, 15 kilos. But I ran from John O'Groats to Land's End. My moniker was raising awareness of veteran suicide and money for the Baton charity. And then next year, I ran 200 miles around a running track, except that it was Christmas. On Christmas Day, they kicked me out. So I ran 100 miles around a running track, and then I ran 100 miles around Dartmoor. So I gave up my Christmas to run 200 miles for charity and to raise awareness of veteran suicide. And then I ran 100 miles along the coastal path, which was just ninja, to raise money for, it's a pop star. Can't remember. It was his daughter who was recovering from a tumor. Pop star, very famous back in the day. Was his name escapes him, but he was a mate of a DJ mate of mine. So I said, I'll do a fundraiser for you. And then I was teaching myself swimming. I'm going to sneeze. Hang on. Excusez-moi. I was teaching myself swimming because I was never that good at it. Even though you've got swimming tests in the Marines, I was never good at front crawl. I could do a length and then I'd die. So I thought I'd teach myself swimming because one day I want to do one of them Iron Men, you know.
Mm.
So I taught myself from YouTube how to do front crawl, and I went from being able to swim one length to being able to swim 10 miles. So I swam. What did I do? I swam 10 miles. I think it was 9.5. I cycled 450, and then I ran 108. So basically, I did a quadruple distance Ironman triathlon, because I did it in a swimming pool, in 7 days. And then I recreated the Royal Marines legendary 9-mile speed march. Again, all for charity, obviously. So I got a bunch of aging veterans, said, right, we're going to show the youngsters that we've still got it. And we went up to Achnacarry in Scotland, where the original commandos used to disembark from the train. And we ran the original route to the castle, which is where the 9-miler comes from. 9 miles to Achnacarry Castle. And we done that just to show the youngsters that, you know, you
still got it.
You still got it. You don't have to lose it if you don't want. And then, like I said, I took that team up to the Arctic. That was quite interesting. And I'm missing out some in it. Oh yeah, that was it. Marathon des Sables. I got this.
Yeah, I mean, that's intense, that, isn't it?
It is intense. It's actually in bivouacs. See what I've done then?
Yeah, touche.
Yeah, I'm a comedian and I don't really even know it. Yeah, no, that was quite funny. So I get this drunken foreign legionnaire getting hold of me, right? Ex-foreign legionnaire who's now a truck driver who owns his own company. And he's sending me these messages on Facebook or something. Chris, I know your story. I drink in the pub with your mate so-and-so. We march or die. We march or die. I'm like, where are we marching or where are we dying? The Sahara. Marathon des Sables. We march or die. I'm like, yeah, okay. I said, are you paying for it? Because it's like, you know, you're going to need $7,000, including your equipment. He's like, yeah, I'll pay for it, Chris. I'm not short of money. I'm like, I said, you know, it's like a 3-year waiting list. So I rang up the English side of the Marathon des Sables, the girl that sorts that out for the English people. And I said, listen, I know there's no chance to get a place this year, but she went, oh, actually, because of all this COVID stuff, she said loads of people have cancelled. So I can get you 2 places. I'm like, I'm in. Give me them places, right? So I called up this guy. I messaged him. I said, I've got the places. You know, I'm going to need some money from you. Didn't reply to me Facebook message. I went to his profile on Facebook. It was like, you know, that blank photo and all that. It was weird. So I picked him up because he phoned up a couple of times. I'm like, and the phone just went to answer machine. So I called the next day. Then it clicked, didn't it? Like, I think the reality in a sober light of day had hit home to him that, yeah, I'm going to run. He said to me, Chris, you'll run the Marathon des Sables with me. I said, no, I'll start the Marathon des Sables with you. If you're a knob, I'm going to leave you behind. And that was the plan, basically, you know. And he fucked off, didn't he? You know, he let me down. So there I am. I've got a place in the toughest race on the planet, the most famous foot race there is, Marathon des Sables across the Sahara. And yet I need to find $7,000. So I said to my girlfriend, I told you she was good, didn't I? I said, honey, listen, I can't say no to this. You know, I know it wasn't my idea and this guy was, but I can't let it go. Should I sell my Rolex? And she's like, no, you can't do that. It's sentimental. I was like, okay. Anyway, bless her. She gave me $5,000. And I found the £2,000 for kit, you know, and that was it. It actually got cancelled that year, and we had to wait another year because of all the next year they put it on, but they were insisting everybody was jabbed up for it. So that was never going to happen. So I had to wait another year before they, you know, before I could go, basically. Yeah. And when they insisted everyone was jabbed up, that race they had 3 heart attacks. All right. The next time when I went, I was standing outside our bivvy. Our it's like a Bedouin tent, you know. Stood outside it on the first night of racing, I think it was. I just watched a guy in the opposite tent drop dead. And next thing, they're screaming for the medics, and the medics come running, and they were jumping on this guy. I was stood there thinking, fucking hell, his family think he's having the time of his life, you know. He's gone off for his dream. And probably, let's just say, you know, the decisions we make in life, he's now fucking dead. And just really sad, mate, it was. And they brought him back to life. He didn't look very alive, but he was conscious, and they helicoptered him out. And I believe he made it. Loads of people go down in Marathon des Sables. You know, you have to keep stopping because people collapse like in front of you and that, and you have to make sure that they're all, you know, all right and everything. But this guy, that's heat exhaustion. This guy was, you know, proper full-on heart attack job. So yeah, that was Marathon des Sables. That was interesting. Oz was the second toughest year on record. The toughest year is when they had this dysentery ran rife, and almost everybody caught it, and 2/3 of the people dropped out. My one was heat. It was they changed the time of year for it. So we ran, it was 52 degrees. And you got to run up to 2 marathons a day in that. That was hot, really, just horribly hot, you know, horribly hot. But, you know, achievable.
I mean, the amount of body weight you're going to lose doing that anyway.
Yeah, I was pretty slim then anyway, because I hadn't really done much training for it. I'd been on a binge up until 13 weeks before. And finally, I come to me senses. I'm like, Chris, just get off that shit. Stop it. You know, just get your fucking race head on, mate. So in 13 weeks, I had a crash course in losing weight. So I fasted. And ran up the steepest hill in my city while I fasted every day for a week. That knocked 2 stone off me, or stone and a half. I then hit the sauna to just I've got a sauna in the backyard. I was just doing heat training, stepping up on my son's little box. Just stepping up, doing like hundreds of step ups and getting the sauna as hot as I could. And then I signed on at the beauty salon for their sunbed, so that when I got to the desert, I want like this white puny guy that was going to get sunburnt and everything. So I made up for it. I tried going running, but it was, fuck that. I tried running 17 miles, but ended up just calling my girlfriend saying, can you come and get me? It's pissing down with rain. It's hard. I don't feel, but this is what I'm saying to people. You don't, you know, it's all mental. You know, a lot of people just walk the Marathon des Sables. As long as you get a bit of a shift on, you'll be fine, you know. But how many people do you think deny themselves the chance to do it because in their head they think you got to be this ninja fucking commando, you know, ultra athlete runner, da. So yeah, that was Marathon des Sables. And then I'd always wanted to do a sea passage. I've read lots of books about it and started to meet people on my podcast that had rode the Atlantic. And naturally, I thought that was awesome. You know, I know Marines that have done it. I know Marines that are world record holders. I know people that have done it with one leg. One chap, Cale Royce, he's he's got no legs, and he's rode it twice. So I started putting a plan together, and 10 months later, I was flying out to Gran Canaria off the coast of Africa to start rowing to Barbados, which we've just done.
I mean, how was that? I mean, I can't imagine what the experience of that is.
It was,
Is there a lot of boredom in it?
yeah, very, very extremely boring.
Hmm.
After 4 weeks, the novelty sort of wears off, and you just want. In our case, we did it independently, so we weren't like in a race or anything. It was just us. There was another crew that left at the same time as us, so we sort of kept a bit of contact with them. And what am I saying? Yeah, it's a strange experience. It's the only thing I've ever done where I did think, fuck me, you could die here, you know. If you fall overboard and you're not clipped on, that's it. It's game over. There's no way you can turn around a boat that weighs probably half a ton, if not more, you know, with all the equipment on, and then row against the waves and against the wind to try and, you know, you could if it was calm, but you know, it was a thing, you know. God, don't fall overboard. Or of course, if you get capsized and you can't, and she doesn't right herself, that you're going to be in problems there. But yeah, it was just it was surreal. I said to my girlfriend, look, I don't want my son saying goodbye tomorrow because I'm going to be in bits. I don't care about the fucking row. That's, you know, I'm not bothered about. I'm just, you know.
Yeah. I mean, did you hit any really bad weather, or were you lucky?
Yeah, just to say that my girlfriend said, no, your son's got to say goodbye, Chris. So I said to him, listen, son, yeah, he's only 9.
Yeah.
But I had to be honest with him. I said, listen, ordinarily, I just promise you Daddy's going to smash this. No problem. But I don't want to do that, because if something happened, and it's very unlikely, but if it did, I don't want your last memory of me is I made you a promise that I never made good. So, you know, let's not stress. I'm pretty sure everything's gonna pretty much be fine. But and he totally got it. He totally got it. You know, he's so switched on. And he did come and say goodbye, and he was booing his eyes out. And I was kind of in that mode where, you know, it's game face time, and get this boat out of the marina and into the sea, and I've never felt like that. It was a strange feeling. It was a relief to get out there, you know?
Yeah.
And even within 3 days, we had big weather. And the guy whose boat it was that had given us the training, it's a company called Mission Atlantic. If any veterans out there want to row the Atlantic, just give Chris Martin a call at Mission Atlantic, and he'll sort everything out for you. And Chris said to us in the briefing, he said, look, I'm looking at the weather app, folks. You're going to have big waves in 3 days' time. And he said, it's going to be frightening, but you'll be all right. And I'm like, it's not going to be frightening, and we're going to be all right, because, you know, you don't want to fucking make it frightening for yourself, do you? No. Do you know what I mean? Imagine being out there and being frightened. It would be awful. So you just got to get out and smash it and ignore it. Yeah, big waves give us bigger ones. And so we had big waves. It was very hard getting away from Gran Canaria because it was onshore wind. So we was battling into this headwind the whole time. The island just never got any. It took us about 10 days before we lost sight of it.
Wow.
And then the wind started to turn, and then we started to get, you know, it started to become easier. Then we was chasing the trade winds, but they took weeks to come. I thought you pretty much, get them as soon as you get out into the Atlantic. The trade winds are going to come, pick you up, and, you can be sunbathing and eating, having a barbecue. Wasn't like that. It took us ages to find. By the time we actually picked the trade winds up good and proper, we was over a third of the way into the Atlantic, if not half the way. And then when they get you, oh my God, you see some interesting weather. We had a squall come through, and it's like someone's turbo powered your boat. You just started rocketing. They call it surfing. It was amazing, and we're all good until we must have been about 200 miles from Barbados, and the weather was a bit tasty that day. Nothing I didn't think that we couldn't handle, but I literally took my eye off the ball for a split second, and I looked sort of, I say out to sea, you're out to sea anyway, but I looked in the direction of Barbados, the way we were going, and in that second, this wave just came, picked up the boat, and just turned us over. So we sat there underwater, still in the seat, but just upside down. Everything gone green. Well, I seem to remember it. Everything just looked green. And I thought, well, Isabel, you better come up right now. And she did. We popped up, and one of the gunnels, I think you call it, still underwater. I thought, oh no, I just had this vision that she'd become waterlogged somehow. Water had penetrated one of the compartments, and we was, now waterlogged, and it was going to be a, Mayday call. So I shouted at Louis, other side of the boat, mate. And he just knew instantly. We both dived for the other side of Isabel, and she righted, and the water all pulled out of her, and yeah, it was great. Yeah, yeah, it's a bit of fun.
So the boat itself self-righting like a lifeboat. I mean, it sounds a silly question because I don't know.
It's only self-righting if you have the hatches shut.
Right.
If you which is your doors basically.
Yeah.
And you've got two of them, one at the front, one at the back. If you've left one open, then your boat's going to fill with water. Your cabin's going to fill with water, and if the cabin's 2 square meters, that's 2 tons of water you've now got holding you down in the Atlantic. So we tried really hard to focus on keeping the cabin door shut, but you can't do it all the time. It's just way too hot. So a lot of the time we just judged it and took a gamble, and it paid off. But yeah, very surreal, mate. Very surreal.
Yeah. I can imagine. So what's the future got planned for you?
Well, I've already started to spend more time with my family.
Yeah.
And worry less about work, which is, anyone who knows YouTube knows it sucks you in. And I don't want to be that person anymore. I'd rather be out, on my BMX with my son, going down the pump track, So that was kind of something that came out of the time at sea, the reflection. Why am I doing this out here? Why am I not like hiking the Inca Trail with my family, or doing Everest Base Camp with them, or driving a camper van into France, or do you know what I mean? Just so that's one thing. But having said that, it had always been a dream of mine to climb Mount Everest. I've literally read every book I can on the subject. I've watched every documentary. I've had people on my podcast. I've had about probably 3, 4, maybe even 5 people now who've either climbed Everest or tried to. I've even had one person who was on there during the quote unquote killer storm, in which, was it 9 or 10 people lost their lives. And yeah, so that's kind of the next adventure plan.
Take a lot of planning that, man, wouldn't it?
Well, I'm hoping. I don't think it will take as much as the row. Obviously, it's a lot of money to find.
Yeah.
So I'll try and maybe do some sort of crowdfunding, try and get sponsors and that sort of thing. But kit-wise, you need a summit suit and a pair of crampons, perhaps an ice axe. I think the rest of it, the companies will provide you, or you can buy cheap in Kathmandu. And then you just got to make sure that you're ready, both physically, knowledge-wise, and mentally, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's not a hugely technical climb, although there's a couple of there's some steps as you get very high on the mountain that you've got to get up. So it's not as though, we're not going to be mountaineering, so to speak. It's more of a tough walk. And, I'm probably sounding a bit flippant. I don't mean to be. Obviously, you've got to be shit up on safety. If someone falls in a crevasse, you've got to, know which rope and carabiner and knot setup you're going to use to get them out. Obviously, the frostbite sort of stuff we train for in the military, and the camping in tents in sub-zero temperatures is something that I'm familiar with. So what I'm trying to say is I'm not sort of hugely. If someone said, "Did I want to climb K2 without oxygen?" Yeah, that would be quite some preparation, I would imagine. So.
But you're not like you're not afraid of it.
I'm never afraid of anything when I'm sat here.
Yeah.
I guess the moment would be when you make your summit day.
Yeah.
It depends if it's if it's as still as a daisy or whatever the expression is, and you're feeling strong, then I guess you just start yomping and you go for it, and touch wood, the sun rises in the morning and it turns into a beautifully warm, healthy day, and you have some time on the summit, and then you quickly make your way as safely as you can back down to either the top camp or even the next one down if you can. If you leave that top tent and it's blowing a hoolie and you don't know how unpredictable it's going to be, because the weather apps now are amazing. The weather app we had for the row, we had one called Windy. It literally told you 10 days in advance what the wind's going to be in 10 days time, and it was bang on every time. So I don't know how that is on top of Everest, but if you come out that tent and it's bitterly cold and it's minus 37 and it's blowing, and you lose a glove, that's it, you lose a hand. You get up there, all kind of manner of stuff could go wrong, and it might not be you, it might be somebody else that you got to then stop and help, or make that call. If they're past it and they ain't going nowhere, you got to leave them. We haven't got to leave them, but there's not an awful lot you can do for someone in the death zone.
Yeah.
Then of course it can turn into something completely different, can't it?
Yeah, true.
But yeah, I don't predict that happening. I predict that we're going to have the prior scenario and it's going to be gravy.
Well, Chris, it's been nearly 2.5 hours. I've took up enough of your time now, I think. honestly, thanks for coming on and telling your story. It's been enlightening, honestly. I mean, I thought I knew bits about you, but there's lots that I didn't know about you. And anyone listening to this, I hope they've really enjoyed it. I'll put the links in the show notes and stuff like that for your books, for anyone's interested in going and purchasing them from you. If you just want to tell us about your podcast, where people can watch it and stuff.
Yes. So it's called Bought the T-shirt. As anyone watching can see from my hoodie, this is not self-promotion, Frankie. This is just too lazy to iron a shirt or a T-shirt. Always stick this one on. It's always a lifesaver. So bought the T-shirt, or just type Chris Thrall into YouTube. You know, you can probably tell by me, I'm about transparency and helping people to see not just, how they're holding their self back in life, but how there's many people out there that are more than willing to help you back. We have, we've got a good crowd. We've got about 80, I think, coming up for 90,000 subscribers now, and mixed bag, obviously, because I talk to military people. I've talked to lots of Falklands veterans and got them to tell their story, but sort of our general consensus is we're freedom loving people that want to be in the light. And so, we shed light on social issues, and we go deeper than what you're ever going to hear in the mainstream media, what's really going on there. And then I always relate it to the spiritual battle, because if you want change in life, the politician's never going to do that for you. That's not their job is to protect the bankers. You want change in life, you've got to address it through energy, vibration, and frequency. And that means upping your game, living your life and not worrying about anyone else. And one of the seminal thing I was taught once, although it sounds a bit arrogant, it's not meant to, but someone said to me, Chris, how do you help a sick person? I was like, I don't know, you put your fucking arm around them or something. How do you help a homeless person? Show empathy. How do you help a poor person? Fucking give him a loan. He went, Chris, you help a sick person by not getting fucking sick. You help a poor person by not being poor. And you help a homeless person by not being homeless. What it meant is let's fight our spiritual battle. Let's play our A game. Let's work on ourselves. Let's forget about what other people are doing. That's just a distraction. And let's get to that beautiful place of enlightenment where we actually become a beacon of light for other people, which is kind of, I guess, what I try to do through me endeavors. It's become less about me and my ego self, and more about, can I be in service to other people? And I don't want nothing for it. But if anyone has got a villa in the Caribbean and it's available this summer, my email's on my website.
Don't think you're going to get many of that. Yeah, but you never know, do you?
Right. Well, I got a villa in I got a villa for 3 weeks in Gran Canaria, all given to me, free of charge. I've had a holiday home in North Devon given to me twice now for my, for the family holiday. Couldn't quite entice anyone to buy me a ticket back from Barbados. Because obviously I put a lot of my own money. We put thousands in. I took a year off work. I mean, that's whatever anyone earns a year. Imagine not earning that, and then having to pay, £10,000 out your savings on top, and then having to raise another £45,000. You put a lot of yourself into this. So if someone wants to offer you, your family a week in a caravan, which they've done, that we're extremely grateful. This sounds like I'm plugging. It was a joke, folks, but
no. Get it. Right, I'll stop the recording there then. Again, thanks for coming on. I've really enjoyed it. I hope it's not been too cringe-worthy for you. And
Been awesome, mate.
I'll just stop the. I hope you enjoyed that podcast. I enjoyed recording it. If you could just hit the like button, and also if you could subscribe and hit the notification bell, that'd be great, because it'll help the channel grow. The more people will see it, the bigger it'll get, and the more guests I can get on, and the more people I can talk to. Well, I hope you enjoyed it, like I said. Look forward to the next one. Hopefully we'll be out next week as normal. Bye-bye now.